Hello everybody, this is Tigitar here and welcome back to the post-gridlock Tigaria production. Part number 12, I believe, or something like that, on the Tigaria building, and we are back now near the main core of Tigaria to continue on with the remaining display sections that I want to add in. Very quick note you'll already realize, I'm sure, is that my voice probably sounds different. I don't have my regular microphone with me. I am kind of a few thousand miles away from my regular recording setup. But I did a little test, listened to my mic sound, and was like, yeah, it's not great, but it's not bad enough to use as an excuse not to get one of these commentaries done if I've got the time. So, here we go. Back onto basically the left corner of the new expansion area of Tigaria here. So we are outside of pretty much the center core, and right above where we did the augmented biome sections 2 episodes ago, before going to gridlock. So I needed to establish a little bit of a barrier here on the inside, to just separate the core of Tigaria and the natural land that it still rests in, and this new expansion zone where I have more room to really build bigger, more spacious displays, I guess. So we do have that pyramid already over there on the left-hand side, whereas on the right side we have this fairly large snowy mountain, which was in natural terrain. So those two things I was kind of working with to help provide naturally um, the outside edges, depicting the barrier where the core of Tigaria rests, I guess. Basically, just slightly separate sections that allowed me to still include the natural terrain in some way, um, into Tigaria. So basically, I had these two sections now designated. I did have future plans that I wanted to build pathways, connecting easily from top to bottom and left to right and stuff, but that would come in time. My next goal was to start on the next display building, which is one that I had plans to start putting up long ago, the die display. So if you remember, I think I mentioned I planned on doing the die display when I went to and ended up building the paint shop slash paint display instead, when I realized that how many different dies there were. And I did definitely want to display each die on top of their own mannequin, or by displaying the die on an armor set on mannequin. So I wanted to use quite a bit of space, I guess, is what it comes down to. So now with this extra expansion zone down here at the on the left-hand side, that's the first thing I start to build in. Basically, my idea was a general. Um, oh, I don't know. There's like a specific terms for this broad theme, but classic medieval kind of, um, or something post-medieval Gothic, or like I I I I really don't know words very well, but you'll pretty soon see what I'm talking about. A big old kind of cathedral looking build here. I pretty much guessed on the amount of space that I would need inside of the building, and just sort of outlined a general shape with a bit of an uneven asymmetric floor design, just to add a little bit of elevation change and switch add some variety using that. And then on the interior, I had roughly symmetrical uh, room structure, I guess, with a big top second floor bumping up in the center of the building, and then two side wings that slope and expand outside from each side. So then I start messing around with some of the interior wall designs so that I'm able to include large structural pillars as part of the walls. And then that also lets me separate these side wings into their own little smaller sections where I can do stuff like this stained glass window, and then have area to organize different types of dye. That's generally my thinking going into it. So I pretty quickly started to realize that I might want to use some actuators and bring in the foreground blocks to beef up the interior structure rather than doing it all with walls. Definitely allows me to bring the level of detail up, and seeing as I have enough space, I wasn't too worried about using a little bit of it for actuated blocks. So I started thinking about that, and then I started playing around with different roof design um, methods. So at first I was thinking blocks, slopes downward, and then maybe some walls inside below those to create a little bit of depth. But then I realized if I made the main structure shallower sloped, brought it down a little bit, then I could just put a different type of wall for the actual roof shingle look up on top of that, and that would allow the game lighting to be much smoother and better illuminate the roof design. And I had a little bit of flexibility with like colors and well, shading based on the lighting and stuff. But so that's what I ended up adjusting here. I softened the slope of the roof that I had, and then went with copper brick walls for the brown, bright brown, coppery shingle look. So I liked that color. Just I think they're just unpainted copper brick walls, and the texture and color really work pretty well for the sort of whatever you want to call it, um, post-medieval classic or something. I don't know words here. In the center of the structure, I needed to buff up the structure a little bit too, so I went and copied up my interior pillar design using actuators. A little bit of detailing with hammer, which adds just a little texture here and there, and then just kind of continuing on with the roof and the structure and the pillars, all to get them kind of to come together structurally, thematically, and in color and texture and everything. You might notice a little bit, I also tried something different in this build where I brought in a little bit of asymmetry in the shading. And so on the left part of the building, especially on the roof, the sloped roof support, yeah, with the gray brick roof supports basically. And it's easier to tell in the map view when I flash that up. But I used some lighter shading on the left-hand roof supports and then darker slightly on the right. And my idea was to actually emulate a little bit of natural lighting, and imagining that the sun were positioned to the upper left of the structure, lighting up the left-hand side more than the right. And it's definitely subtle, especially um, in plain view, in-game view here, but it does add just a little bit of extra detail overall. And it's definitely something that I want to mess around implementing more of in the future for sure. So once I was pretty set on the basic structure here, I had the exterior outlined basically is all, and then the main floors laid out. I got a bunch of the platforms out, figured out basically how I wanted to arrange the mannequins. I just needed to be able to space them out with one block in between each of them. I figured that that would give me enough space. I think that's only one block. It's honestly kind of hard to tell now. I'm starting to second guess myself. But no, yeah, it's definitely one block between each of the mannequin platforms. So I figured out how much space I needed. I had already counted and organized all of the dies. So I knew how many of each section I wanted to have room for. So then I just needed to go ahead and figure out how to designate the different room sections for the number of die mannequins that I needed to put in. And so that's what I first go for. Kind of also decide on a couple of spiral staircases leading from the first up to the second floors, and then the rest is just figuring out where the displays are going to be organized. And once I figure that out, then I basically have all of the leftover space to work with for the remainder of any larger scale detailing. There on the right hand side of the little staircase sloping down on the ground floor level, I did have to adjust a little bit where my pillar of actuated blocks comes down. I did want the staircase of platforms going in front of it, so I had to replace some of those blocks with walls. But because that's just a little straight section with no hammered blocks or anything like that, it's quite easy to do. Was able to just pick a background brick that matched it pretty well and allowed my staircase to go in front of it, which was pretty important. Another thing I'll mention with the newer idea that I've been working with of using these interior actuated pillars is using obsidian. I find that obsidian is important in the fact that it blends with very few blocks. So, like block blending, I'm sure you're aware. Types of wood, various types of wood, all blend their textures together when they're adjacent. Most all types of brick blend together, but I'm sure you know how the stone accent slabs specifically basically don't blend with anything, and for the purpose that they're used then for when you don't want blending. Obsidian also hardly blends with anything, unless, of course, hammered down onto something. For example, if you put a half slab of even a stone accent slab, you hammer it once into the half slab, it will always blend, to my knowledge, if I'm correct about this, with whatever block is underneath it, if there's a full block there. Same with sloping bottom corners, I guess. I'm sure you know more, you know what I'm talking about, even though I'm probably not describing it the most accurately. But back to my story about obsidian is in structures like this where I put marble down on the floor, which I do really like that as a texture and color option for the floors in these types of buildings. The obsidian doesn't blend with it, so when I actuate it or use it in a pillar, the floor doesn't get molded up and have an uneven spot um, where the pillar comes down and meets it, which is important because I want the floor to be, in front of in the foreground, and I want it to be smooth and continuous. So that's something important. You'll notice I added a little bit more detail on the roof. I just got out a little bit of the wrought iron fences and put those just as a little detail and kind of a smoother out on the edges of the roof actually. So that worked out pretty nice because I think what I did is I put it on every other copper brick wall, meaning that it kind of more now visually steps up in half slabs rather than full blocks every other block. So it's much smoother, worked out very nicely. And then I had the next thing typically once I get to this point in the structure, basically I've got my display all laid out how I wanted, and I have the major distinguishing the major features interior designated. Then I start thinking about the natural lighting, including windows. So I started playing around with window inclusions. So I got a bunch of um, iron fences. I believe that's all it is, right? Yeah, so for the main windows that I wanted to space out to thoroughly, naturally light the mannequins a good amount, with the remaining space adjacent to the mannequins, I did want to add some stained glass windows because I really like the feel that they provide and the colors, especially for this theme, was definitely very important. But I think I debate a little while about how many windows to include, because obviously I'm gonna also build in artificial lighting and lamps and candles or whatever I end up doing to fully light the display itself so that you can evenly see evenly lit examples of the different dyes. But I had a hard time deciding how much was too many windows and how much was enough. But once I got kind of to a spot that I felt was okay, got my armor sets out. So another sort of fun part of this project specifically was the armor um, amount of silver sets of armor, basically. And I did decide to go with silver armor because I wanted, well, because I thought that armor has always been one of my favorite armor sets. It's one of the longest standing armor sprites in Terraria. It hasn't been modified like the gold armor has. Um, and in general, I just have always thought it looked really cool. The helmet is unique and provides a really cool shape, and I've always enjoyed it. So I wanted to do that as a big reason why I wanted to use silver armor. But also, being silver, it's a light, almost white base, so that it displays each type of dye pretty dang well, which is probably one of the main reasons why silver armor is the example set on all of the dyes if you look on the wiki. So they definitely agree there as well, which I really like. So anyway, I had to make a bunch of silver armor sets. So I did actually go on a mining expedition just for silver ore specifically, and spent a little bit of time just vacuuming up a bunch of silver ore on some throwaway world in order to make all of these armor sets. I forget off the top of my head how many different ones there are. There's something like 119 or 120 something. I'm trying to remember on the wiki. Okay, yeah, there's 119 total dies according to the wiki. Although in single player only 118 because team die is not available. So somewhere around there anyway. Actually, I'm looking on the wiki. They have the silver armor for the main um, die example in the tables, but in their overview screenshot or compilation block with all of the dies, it actually shows it on wood armor instead of silver. I forgot about that. I take the silver over the wood though, I think. So anyway, yeah, had to go mining so that I could craft about 120 sets of silver armor, which I forget how many silver ore that is, but it's a little bit. Again, as I've mentioned though, with endgame tools and um, potions and everything else, you become very efficient at everything, including mining for even a specific type of ore. So it was not hard at all. And after that, I basically just quickly threw in some furniture on the floor, just some basic thematic furniture, including some of the bigger potted plants. Got the pots, some other miscellaneous uh, uh, mannequins, so that I could sort of just show off some other armor sets to provide more of the atmosphere that this is an armor set die display, and just filled in the furnishing from there. Overall, there is still like a fair amount of empty space to contrast with the furniture, but as well to highlight the dies themselves, which I thought worked out all right. I feel like the whole structure found a decent balance of cleanly displaying the die in question, but also feeling alive and detailed enough to 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 not feel what am I trying to say? Boring. There are like 7 different words that I know that I was searching for and couldn't find any of in my mind. Anyway, after I got the general furnishing done, I was fairly happy with it, so quickly I rebuilt the land to support it underneath, and I was kind of debating on how to approach this specific little fill zone, because it's built on top of the augmented biomes that we designated last episode, or sorry, 2 episodes ago before Gridlock. So I ended up realizing that I wanted some sort of structural support um, between the new large museum-like structures on top and the biomes that they rest upon. So I decided to basically put a buffer of a big chunk of dirt and natural land, or natural looking land, to support the structures above the biomes. So just filled in with dirt, and then added a little bit of detail in some artificial stone textures here and there. Also added in a little teleporter for access over here, which I would then later tie into the rest of the teleporter hub. And then I moved on to the next structure. And next up, I decided would be the furniture display. Now, this would be like the core furniture display, or the main furniture display. Obviously, there are a lot of different furniture sections and categories, so I did come up with a list of separate furniture items that were not going to be included in this specific display. And that list includes banners, both enemy banners and non-enemy banners, music boxes, statues slash fountains, crafting stations, crafting furniture. That I did actually end up including in this main structure here. Then there's plants. So basically a bunch of potted plant types, herbs, natural plants. We have shells and coral and crystal shards and all of that stuff. And then rubble. Um, and all of that stuff I decided to organize as part of the plant display, sort of natural plants and features rather than the furniture. Wiring and mechanisms, all the wiring related furniture and mechanisms I would put in their own spot. I have bars and gems and coins and loot section that I had intended on building its own vault-esque chamber underground, similar to the vault from Circa Terra. I'll take a little break to just summarize my structural setup here. So I start basically outlining the outside of the building after figuring out roughly the main block that I'm going to need space-wise to include all of the different themed furniture sets, which is the main focus of this display, the furniture display. All the different themed furniture. And then other miscellaneous stuff thrown in as well. Another excluded furniture type would be fishing related. So we have trophies from fishing, other types of wall furniture, which I would include more in the fishing display. And then there's some, specifically the drum set, which places down on the ground. I was going to put that with the music section. And then, of course, the main trophies and relics, and those were already part of the boss display. I did realize that I would probably end up overlapping a lot of these items, so maybe a lot of the fishing trophies I would include in both places, not just one. But that was basically my idea here. I'm sure I'll mention this again, but one thing that I hilariously ended up overlooking somehow was the large potted plants. I never actually built a section to display just the large potted plants. Obviously, it goes in furniture, but also the plant section of the displays. So I had intended on doing it in either of those, but when I did both of those structures, I forgot about it both times. And that's something I realized afterwards, and then I ended up actually fitting the large potted plants in a small array on a bridge feature that connects roughly where we are now, building the right-hand wall of the furniture display, and the core platform um, that circumnavigates the core of Tigaria further to the right. It meets right at the outside of the block display is where it meets. So I do end up with a pretty nice part to include the large potted plants, but it was funny to me that I forgot it both times. I should have remembered. Anyway, the furniture layout, roughly I had the shape for again, and then I just was building a big, uniquely shaped box that I wanted to have some character to, in order to actually hold all of the furniture and stuff. The build itself, like the structure, obviously being as big as it needed to be, made it kind of an awkward size to build, because it was either going to be just a giant straight pillar with that would look super weird with no detail, or I was trying to balance avoiding that with making a completely uncohesive, uh, rough, very unsmooth, some sort of structure. I had a worry that it is going to be hard to make a structure this large and generally rectangular shaped, while not having it be a giant smooth rectangle, but also not having it look super awkward and jumbly or rough. So I came up with a basic idea to have smooth marble for the large portions of exterior structure wall, and connecting the little segments would just be these blocks of uh, brick, basically white painted brick of various kinds to add that texture. And I just built a large shape using that general pattern. And I tried to, again, roughly it's a giant rectangle, but I wanted it to be unique and added as many somewhat reasonable twists and turns and bump outs and stuff. So I knew that I did want to have space for other sections of furniture types within, so I needed to have some unique spaces allotted for that. And just went around, made this really weird looking structure. It ended up looking okay, I guess, but I definitely struggled with the size and the scale of this one, for sure. Again, with the floor, similar to the die display, I sort of just slabbed that out first. And for this one, I actually used, I didn't use the marble for the floor because I wanted marble for the wall block. Instead, I used obsidian for the wall itself. And this would allow me to use anything I wanted for the pillar, actuated pillar design interiorly, whatever you want. The interior actuated block pillars for inside later on. I knew I wanted to do some of those, so preliminarily having obsidian be the floor, and I did paint it with, I just forgot the name of it. Reverse paint, inverse paint, uh, oh, what's it called? Oh my gosh. The negative, that's what it's called. Negative coating, I think is what it is. So it negatively flips the colors of all blocks painted. So I used negative coating on the obsidian, which gave it sort of that creamy color for the floor, which we'll see more later on, of course. And that was my idea for the floor anyway. The remaining structure, I still wanted a little bit of depth and character to the roof option specifically. So in order to emulate a little more depth, I added in the sort of back frame of the structure, and I made it a little bit thinner and designed the brick block sections so that they're cut off by the marble. And hopefully, I was hoping that that would add a little bit of depth to the roof, so that I could keep that looking a little bit fuller and fitting for the size of structure that it is. And then I went ahead and actuated, of course, all of the marble and the bricks there. Generally, it worked okay, but again, it's one of those things that just the size and scale was tough to manage for sure. Um, and just having this large of a structure with like 3 block wide exterior walls was, a little bit goofy looking for sure. I knew that I was going to be adding interior support um, pillars to depict more structural support inside. So I was hoping it would end up working out somewhat. I added in the last few floor sections. So on the major bump out areas, I had little slabs of floor to put in. And then before long, I did want to get to the layout of the core furniture volume, which I usually like to do so that I have an idea of the space that I need to reserve for the display itself. So the main purpose of the display again is the furniture. mainly talking about the themed furniture sets. So I went and I first organized all of the sets by type and um, got out each of their unique platforms to include to support each of the furniture sets. Obviously, I could have made these a lot more compact as you see now, but I wanted to, again, give each item on display its own space so that things weren't crowded. That was my hope. So then I spent a little while basically just designing out the layout for the furniture to give it somewhat of a symmetrical and logical order. And then I needed to figure out what type of background wall I wanted to use to sort of highlight each of the furniture sets. And I found maybe marble. I think I went back and forth on a few different wall choices here. Um, but I did have a mix of darker gray brick walls that I used behind the platforms themselves, and that way I could kind of beef up the structure that supports each furniture set, as well as provide a barrier that uh, allows for the highlight of each set itself, I guess. Um, got my order of the furniture items basically decided on, and then I went ahead with the rest of, or I get from there, I moved on to other large interior structure supports. So I came up with where I wanted to place larger interior pillars and kind of how I wanted to build and detail those with just enough texture to make them not too smooth and boring. But then I also needed some of that structure inside where the furniture was laid out, obviously. So I had to figure out where to sneak it in between furniture um, items. And then again, I wanted to continue the platforms through, I think. Or maybe I don't actually. No, maybe I actually have these pillars cut off the platforms. So visually, they don't necessarily go in front of the platforms, but I felt that with I it didn't hurt to have the platforms disconnect and discontinue to cross where the pillars go. So I ended up deciding to take out the platform for the continuous pillar structure, and then I still had enough platform between the pillars to evenly space out the furniture items where I wanted them, basically. And then I continued with the rest of the full height vertical pillars. Again, using a bunch of palladium columns to add a little bit of that pillar shape, um, just to add a little texture to the width. I find that helps generally in most all pillar designs of these actuated block pillars that I've liked doing more recently. So I got those spaced out. I could afford to do one more 3 block wide symmetrically on the right hand part that goes all the way up to the very highest ceiling, and I could sneak that in between the furniture items in the main display, which was nice to do. And then in addition to these main full height columns, I had just one or two like smaller um, sections in some of the bump out parts of the structure to provide that support for the whole shape of the building is all. finally get the actuators out so that I can put them all away in the background there. And then generally I started evaluating the rest of the empty spaces that I had available and what to put in there. Um, I guess maybe I do still take a break here and beef up the walls behind the platforms for each furniture set. Um, Again, this is kind of a random mix of gray painted walls. So we've got ebonstone brick for the majority, but I use pink brick, pink from the dungeon, quite a bit as well to mix that in. And I want to say there's at least one or maybe a couple different brick walls that I use. I also do crimstone. Okay. Typically, what I do for the more random textures that I do is just block swap mainly, and it does look like just a mix between ebonstone and crimstone and pink brick walls, all painted gray for the little horizontal supports. And then I think I do stick with smooth marble walls as the background between, and that kind of highlights and cleanly provides a blank highlight section for each of the different furnitures. I want to say I leave it as marble, but I still have this thought in my mind that I switched it to a different type of brick or something, but still left it lighter gray or white. Need to stop and craft a bunch of blocks and walls, fix up my marble, and the one downside to putting the actuated pillars in first, would be that I have to manually, I can't rely on smart cursor to fill in the walls behind the pillar here. So I got to do that real quick manually, and then that leaves smart cursor the rest of the job to fill in all these rows, which doesn't make too much. I do most of the time run builder potions, as you'll probably notice, when I'm doing the big structure build. So working on getting the mass amount of wall filled in, or the main block structure for buildings. The main like when you have the architect gizmo pack upgraded to the hand of creation and combine those with some of the parts, you kind of you can cap out your placement speed almost entirely with passive accessories, I believe. But and I guess I haven't tested this thoroughly, but I want to say that the builder potion does very slightly increase the speed at which you place blocks or walls, well, and blocks, I guess. But the main metric you can easily measure it against is smart cursor wall placement. But anyway, I feel like the builder potion does provide a little bit of a boost in speed, although it's pretty hard to notice. The main noticeable benefit from builder potions for times like these is the tile and block placement reach. It definitely provides that extra block of placement, which, when added on top of the hand of creation, as well as the toolbox, and wait, I want to say the oh, I guess I'm not actually using it right now. I have the hand of creation and the toolbox. So the toolbox does increase block placement and tool range by one, I believe. But there's also the tool belt that you can equip, which now I'm foggy on the details, but it also can, I believe, stack on top of that. So there are specific times when I need like an extra block of reach if I'm trying to fill in some land, if I'm doing some terraforming, that's what I'm trying to think of, and I need to reach further inside of a massive blocks, then I do sometimes grab the tool belt out because I think it can give you that extra boost on top. Here's me taking another break now where I've got the general layout of main structure, and I have to figure out how to fit the rest of what I want and can fit inside in different sections. So I go and I think I should have had most of the display items organized um, and ready to go, so I knew how many of each I was going to need and how much space they would take up. I realized I could definitely go with an upper floor to cap off the top of the building though. So I went ahead and I got that built in up on top. Um, Interestingly, there is one continuous spiral staircase that takes you up basically the entire building right here. But it's not symmetrical. There's only one on the left side of the building. I didn't have enough space to put another one on the right, so adds kind of an interesting aspect of asymmetry there. And then, like I've said, I try to start working on all of the miscellaneous furniture items and where to put those in. So we've got all of the buff stations, the placeable cannons and launchers, the Eternia crystal stand, and all that type of stuff. The lizard altar is coming in somewhere. Um, there's also quite a few furniture items that regular sets all include, like doors, but aren't actually part of a larger cohesive themed set. So we've got these miscellaneous door examples here. The iron, the lead, the stone, the dungeon door. And then there's also the Christmas tree door, which interestingly includes the table and chair part as well. But that's as far as that furniture goes. So I couldn't justify giving it its own full row in the main furniture display. Got the miscellaneous benches, and then Chippy's couch, and the fireplace, the chimney, all of this type of stuff here. You'll notice I do quite often use the teleporter floating trick. So both to place floating furniture ground based, but also hanging based furniture, so that I can be a little more space efficient, but also to allow for a cleaner display that's not broken up by different blocks that say support the doors. It'd be a little bit awkward if I had the top and bottom of every door placed, um, which I do actually in Circuitera, the way that I arranged those furniture sets, but that was quite different from this. Um, and then continuing on with a whole bunch more miscellaneous furniture. I really tried to include everything in the game, and so I needed to be extra thorough with all of this miscellaneous stuff. I've got those. They're invisible a lot of the time, but the lava, water, and honey droppers, those are all sitting there right there next to the life crystal and mana crystal, which you can now craft the large placeable mana star thing, which is pretty cool. I like that a lot. And then still more, just Just a lot of miscellaneous furniture. There's a lot of stuff. Including the like explosives. So the TNT barrel. Luckily, the TNT barrel doesn't explode tiles because you can just hit it with the weapon, I think, and it will explode. I honestly, I have not messed around with TNT barrels hardly at all, um, but it is definitely dangerous. More dangerous than that, though, would be the actual explosives, which do destroy tiles, which I think I do have displayed somewhere in here, and definitely need to be careful of when I get to the wiring part of the lights. I didn't end up blowing anything up, but it definitely could happen. Here's kind of an important note. So gravestones are obviously furniture, so I need to get a little section for all of those to be included. But the problem is with the new graveyard biome, it doesn't look so good when you're trying to put a cool display together to have the graveyard overlapping over top of it and graying everything out. So I included a bunch of sunflowers to cancel out the graveyard biome, and they're all just sitting on their own echo painted um, grass, and they themselves are echo painted, obviously, just outside of the building, which is why there's a faint yellow glow at nighttime on the upper right hand outside wall of the building. Time for my first water break here to try to preserve my voice from dying. I did include there, as you'll notice, sunflowers on either side so that there wasn't an awkward window where you still found the graveyard biome. And as I mentioned briefly, I was planning on doing the crafting furniture in its own building, but I had enough space for it right up on top. And honestly, there's not as much crafting furniture as I kind of uh, realized, or as I was thought there kind of was. So I was able to fit that all up in top pretty easy. And then I went ahead and I just trimmed up the marble around the sections of displays that I had in to isolate and highlight each section a little bit more. Um, and then I, of course, needed to come up with a different wall type then for the main wall, which I still wanted to be generally smooth-ish and bright, but I did want to have that little bit of a highlight around the actual sections of furniture. So that's what I went for there. Then I needed to figure out what kind of wall to use, and I think I do um, this pink slab wall. Of course, it's painted white, pretty sure white, to bring the color up to the a better shade. I wanted to highlight the staircase, or not highlight, but distinguish the staircase a little bit as well. So got the pearl wood walls out for that, and then added the center support um, pole for the staircase, which in this case I've used sun plate blocks for. And actually, no, it's not white painted pink slabs, it's gray painted, I believe. So I didn't feel like I needed that much more brightness. I felt like the contrast between the gray and the white was a little bit more valuable than just brightening everything up. Again, have to make sure that I manually place everything behind the actuated pillars that I had, because Smart Cursor won't place it behind foreground blocks, walls that is. And then just at this point, I basically have the structure the organization and the space all decided upon, and it was time to go ahead and get the rest of the furniture out. It looks like. Looks like that's what I'm doing now. So again, I had all of the furniture sets basically ready to go. Um, and I just got them all out one at a time and placed them in. You can kind of see the process for using the teleporters for placing the floating. We got floating lanterns for each of them, floating chandeliers. Quick break to drop out all of my actuators now that I'm done with the pillars. And then the doors as well. And the doors are special because you need a block on top and bottom, and they can't be placed on platforms. So I had to do a teleporter on the bottom and top of the door, place the door in between, and then carefully remove the teleporters. Just go down like that with each of the different sets here. And then interestingly, the color of the lighting is obviously unique in each of the furniture sets, so that itself kind of adds to each set having its own ambience and theme visually. The lighting really um, accentuates the type of furniture that is displayed, which again is just another one of the many examples of the brilliance of the Terraria design um, that went into it. We will get to this later on in the wiring part at the end of the uh, once I'm finishing up the furniture here, but it's probably easier to mention now. It'll go pretty quick later, but if I remember correctly, for the interior light switch for the furniture display, I basically add lighting after this, and then all of the in-building lighting is on its own circuit that I can turn on and off, and the lighting does kind of smooth out a lot of the unique colors, or some of them, from the core furniture sets here, as you can imagine. So if you turn off the main lighting, then you can see all of the sets pretty well. And what I'm trying to remember is whether or not the main switch activates each of the furniture set lights as well. I believe it does. However, in addition to the main lights all being wired up, each of the furniture sets is going to end up with its own little switch on the end of its row, so that you can, say, turn all of the lights in the building off and then manually, individually turn on one or each of the furniture set lights as you wish, so that you can then see isolated what color and glow each of the furniture sets has to offer. So that's kind of another important functionality part of the art part of the display. Getting all the way up to the top here, just finishing with obsidian and then finally the gold furniture from the pirates. Worked out pretty well. Looks like I ended up counting correctly, which is always nice when that happens. And then I do kind of just a double check overview, look at everything. Does it look okay? Is it making sense? And then, like I said, let's get some of the main lighting out so that I can get the whole building lit up enough to work with the final furnishing and polishing up and all of that. Mostly just marble furniture here, so we've got the plenty of lamps, chandeliers, and lanterns all around. Um, However, I do whip out the good old white torches as those provide the cleanest and brightest flat white light, so that they kind of give the truest color to light everything up with. And yeah, okay, so I do put the white torches along inside of the furniture sets so that everything is basically fully bright, fully lit up, so that the viewer can see all of the furniture in its full bright color. However, like I mentioned on the wiring, here I go placing the switches now. Each of the sections kind of has its own switch, so that you can, if you do want to, play with the lighting. You can turn all of the building lights off and then individually play with the lights of the displayed sections, and that really allows you to more um, to have that extra level of control over the colors and the viewing of the furniture. Here's the actual furniture set switches in here. The other interesting thing that I do with the wiring, and I'm able to do this with both the torch display as well as the campfires, is now that I've done gridlock and I know how to make shift registers, I can hook up the campfires and then the torches as well with shift registers, which is what I'm doing right here using logic gates. I have to go back into gridlock to give myself a little review on how to set it up. And this way, what I can do is I can have a little toggle switch for you to flip if you want to rotate through each of the different campfire colors. Much nicer than manually turning on and off different campfires. You can just stand here, flip a switch, and then rotate through all of the different colors and see the different glows individually. It always takes me a little bit to get the rotation of the register lined up how I want it to. And I wanted each of the switches obviously to turn the previous campfire off, or torch as well, similar thing. So I needed to add the off switching part as well. So here's the one for the torches. Tried to do it in a somewhat organized fashion so that it's a little bit easier to follow and to set up. And then add the off part of the switch, which basically is simply connecting each of the wires to the previous torch as well as the one that it's turning on. And then just rotating the timing around so that I make sure it's on, so that every torch except for one is off, and then when I flip the switch, that torch goes off and the next one comes on simultaneously. So that was a little bit to set up, but not too bad. And then I was on to the final structural detailing and furnishing furnishing of the furniture display. I still had a little bit of an idea to try and include some more detail and uniqueness to the outside of the structure itself. So I started playing around with the idea that I could have carved on um, um, like large marble statue carvings molded out of and attached to the building. And so I was imagining doing some different types of furniture as actual marble statue type attachments And so I played around with that for a little bit, but in the end, I didn't like anything I was coming up with, and I scrapped the whole idea and just left the outside a lot more plain. But it was a little bit of fun coming up with trying to make a little bit of a 3D marble statue looking feature. But in the end, I didn't really come up with anything that I wanted to keep, so I just scrapped that. And then, yeah, continued on with the rest of the furnishing and stuff. Another note, real quick, off topic from the furniture display. Funnily, before I was starting on this display, I have this noted in my log. I ended up noticing after I finished Gridlock that I had actually missed a painting over in the painting display. And so I had to take a quick little break and actually um, do some retrofitting to get that painting added in, which wasn't too hard or anything, but it was still really funny how I had missed a painting. One of the core and one of my favorite displays, and one of the most iconic and easy to organize displays, in my opinion. It just shows how many different things there are in Terraria and how easy it is to miss stuff when you're trying to do everything. So I'm sure that there are things that I have missed in Tigaria, but my goal has been to get everything in the game included. So now we're back into the interior touch-ups of the furniture building here. Mainly the next big thing is the larger window features. So I still have a couple of sections, namely in that very top center, where I have some big empty space. And I kind of wanted to play around with different ways to detail that in. And I wanted to come up with some sort of um, some little like detail um, design. And so I was playing around with fancy chandeliers and things like that, built out of different furniture combinations to see if I could come up with something fun that looked a little bit extravagant. Um, what I end up going with is no chandelier business, but instead, man, I'm yawning, excuse me. Instead, I got the sunplate blocks out and found a cool way to make a little insignia type design, and that worked out pretty well. Just as sort of an inset into the wall look to highlight the big grand window here in the very top center. And then it was time for continuous furnishing. Furnishing of the furniture display. Oh yeah. Mostly marble furniture, obviously, to try to fit in with the theme and the vibes. And sort of unusually, I actually decided to go with almost entirely just sofas. A lot of times I'll just throw in a variety of different marble furniture or whatever furniture type I'm going for. But in this case, I thought it'd be fun to stick mainly to sofas and then support those with different potted plants and stuff like that. But it ended up working out pretty decent. Then I needed to add in the little explanation signage, of course, which for this one worked out good to put just a regular sign on top of a pillar statue. And then, again, similarly to the dyed building, fill in a bunch of the ground with dirt just to provide that extra support, and then it was on from there basically. A little bit of ground detailing, add a little bit of plant and flower texture color, get the rubble maker out, and then that was that. You saw briefly there in the map the size relative to the die display there, and kind of how the space on this left hand side is getting filled in. So remaining on this side, I wanted to do banners, I wanted to do statues, and I wanted to do the music boxes, and then musical instruments to go with them. But those were kind of the three remaining um, structures that I was hoping to do on the left hand side here. So thinking about how I wanted to lay it out, generally all three were going to take up a lot less space than the furniture display. So I knew I could sort of get more creative in their layout. But for the banners specifically, I wanted to I wanted to arrange them in sort of a long hallway um, that you would walk through to then experience all of the different banners, rather than have them in like a big square building in a big block form or something like that. I thought it would be cooler and it would be more fitting for banners to have a big hallway to display them all in. So that was my idea here. Build a big hallway where I could arrange all of the banners and you could walk down and see them all arranged, hanging side by side as you walked. That was the general premises there. As also in last episode, I've mentioned the Neverhood a few times, an epic claymation point and click adventure game that is very important in my growing up. But there is a very long hallway called the Hall of Records in the Neverhood, which you iconically are required to walk down and back, and it takes forever. And on the wall is written the history of the world that you're in. And so in another nod to the Neverhood, I decided to emulate that a little bit and use it partially as inspiration to create this hall of banners for my banner display. The scale is totally different, but it's kind of a similar idea in some ways. So basically I had figured out the size and hoped that it was enough for all of the banners, and then on top of the hall of banners then would leave me enough space, hopefully, to build the two remaining sections, which would be statues as well as the music. So after I got the hall designated, the area laid out, then I jump up to get the space for the statue display sort of going, and I definitely wanted to do a quick estimate early on to make sure that I was going to have enough space here, and I believe I thought that I was. So just figured out how I wanted to display each of the statues, and then make sure I had enough room to arrange all those out. And actually it looks like the statue display is the next one that I start laying out. So I had the general width of the whole base, and then I just needed to figure out the spacing and sections that I would want to have to organize the statues in. For the theme, sort of cathedral, big brick cathedral castle-y theme was my idea for the statues. seeing as they're all stone carved statues, I figured that that would be a fitting theme. So I quickly started jotting out the exterior large um, tower-like spire design structure for this um, cathedral-like statue display. I wanted some arched ceilings in the interior, so I also worked on building those in as I went. And I'm trying to remember now. I kind of um, jot out the allotted space for statues as I go to make sure that I'm gonna have enough room for all of them. How many statues are there? I have this written down, I'm sure. Um, I have it noted on the signs in game as well, I believe. I'm not seeing it in my notes, actually. That's the banners, the music boxes. Oh, here it is. So I kind of did an overview. At this point, I was reviewing how many banners, music boxes, and statues, of course. So I found there were 127 different statues slash fountains that I wanted to have on display, and so that was my total number that I was going to make sure that I had area and space for. And then there were 88 music boxes and 306 banners. Um, that's uh, generally. Obviously, I had to separate banners into different categories, and then there's a couple unique ones, or at least one, like the War Table banner that is 2 blocks wide instead of one, so it takes up a different amount of space. But as far as the statues and fountains go, I guess I don't know if I had mentioned before that I was planning on doing fountains with the statues. Importantly, statues are only 3 blocks tall, where fountains are 4. So there is a little bit of a size difference there. So I was going to have to take that into account when figuring out where to put the different statues and or fountains. And I was starting to come up with the general shape of the building, and I was still working on making sure that I had enough room inside to have to place all of the different statues. Once I did actually have enough space ready to go, then I went ahead and continued on fleshing out the rest of the structure with the spires and the steeply sloped roofs, and then arched ceilings, of course, inside. Here I go again, switching to the actuated block pillar design interior. Basically, all of my actuated pillars are going to end up with white paint so that after actuation, they aren't extremely dark. They fit a lot nicer in with the rest of the brick structures. It's still easy enough to tell that they're background furniture equivalents in the interior. I keep wanting to say interiorly, like the things that are in the interior. But I'm pretty sure that's not a word, although I do want it to be. I should just start using it and see if it works interiorly. I think interiorly would make general sense to most people, and that's not too hard to say. So maybe that would be a good one to to start working in. Um, but that's like the second or third time that I've wanted to say it in this video so far. Interiorly. Yeah, I just was trying to fit these different windows in interiorly, of course, meaning that on the interior of the building rather than exterior. I don't know. I feel like it's not an issue that is going to be continuing for for a long time. Not a piece of vocabulary that I'm going to be looking for throughout the rest of the day necessarily. But here, after the general, again, structure is still coming together. Um, the important part is the roof and ceiling and how that transition works together. So I was spending adequate time getting the color and the shape and the spacing of the roof and ceiling and how they would go together. So got a couple of different types of wood out for different colors, and then with the brick as well, was playing around with sun plates as well as maybe actually some gray painted wood. Is that right? I don't perfectly remember, but I did want the ceilings to stand out on their own, separate from the rest of the wall and brick mass. Got the little spire bits detailed just a little bit. Started doing a little bit of hammering, and then just yeah, molding everything together, trying to get it to fit and blend. Um, the interesting part definitely of this structure is the roof and ceiling and how that works. So with the steeply sloped spire roof sections, I had sort of this little interior section of the roof where I had space to play with. Um, I don't think that I end up actuating the wood in the roof because I really like the colors that I had on the with the dynasty wood and then regular wood just backing the underneath it. But in order to provide some ambience and depth and get that lighting included in the rest of the roof underneath, I just added some blue stained glass windows, which work out super nice. Just shape and color wise, they look nice and they fit there pretty well. But importantly, they allow a little bit of light to come in during the day so that that whole section of the triangular roof section isn't just a dark block. So very important during the day to have a little bit of ambient lighting allowed. Rest of the general wall, I just got got some sandstone bricks actually. I was assuming that I was just using ebonstone brick walls, but actually it was sandstone brick, which I do believe are very similar wall um, um, textures, especially when painted gray. They're very close. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, might be something that could be taken advantage of if you wanted to do some very subtle, intricate designs in a wall. You could use the same color paint on both sandstone and ebonstone brick walls, and you might be able to do some really interesting things. Um, anyway, after I get the walls filled in for the most part, I wanted to make sure that I got my final statue mount and statue and fountain mount count so that all those were ready to go. What I end up doing, I basically fill in all of the area that I can with the little mount displays, and the spacing and number of uh, of mounts for the statues wasn't really uh, the count didn't come out really well to lend itself to organizing the statues into different sections. But then again, the statues themselves would be hard to organize in sections or different categories generally. I mean, you could easily have, first off, I'm thinking of crafted statues versus naturally found statues. Or maybe more um, logically, you have the alphabet, letter, and number statues separate from the found natural monster and critter statues, which maybe would also include the crafted critter statues in that portion. But what I ended up realizing is all of the statues kind of are themed very similarly. They're all stone statues that take up the same amount of space, and maybe what my best bet would be simply to randomize and sprinkle all of the different statues as well as fountains throughout the whole display. And that's what I end up doing, is just randomizing the layout of all the statues, and not procedurally, but just by hand, sort of randomly spacing them out. And that works out pretty good in the end for the most part. I just have to make sure that I leave some of the top spaces available for the fountains, as they're a little bit taller. So it's fairly random, except for a few things like fountains having to be on top. Then I got the windows figured out. I still interior stained glass windows for as well blue, kind of to match the theme that I had started with the blue windows in the roof, and got those figured out. I used actuated glass that's hammered in diagonal lines to add a little bit of texture on top of the stained glass, and that worked out pretty nice. And then also did a little bit of a design in the top center one, as you saw there, where I added that heart-shaped carving or onto the stained glass. It worked out nice, being as I had as I planned ahead to have an even block structure. So there's a 2-block center in this one rather than a single block. And I definitely did want to have that for the statues so that I could, if I wanted, have a statue centered, which I did end up having to do, and I picked the heart statue for that instead of randomizing it, so that it matched the window up there. But because there's I had to put one statue in the center of the building because there's there's an odd number overall. As I mentioned, it was 119 or something. That was the dies. 127 statues, including fountains too. So then there was the accent color on top of the blue from the windows. I got out some purple paint on just the, I think yellow banners is what I used, but just to make some nice deep purple banners. And these banners ended up being sort of the unifying furniture piece to tie all of these left-hand large displays together. So I think I'd used them already in the, if I remember right, didn't I? I think I used them in the die display, and I may go back and put some in the furniture display as well. But I used them to decorate the banner display and then also the music display, which is coming in to the left of where we are now. I got the rest of the lighting also started to get filled in. So various candles on little shelves to make sure that all of the statues had their own adequate light distribution. And then a few other details here and there in the general ground furnishing, on the or floor level furnishing, clean up with the actuators. I guess there's also a couple of those larger artificial banner designs that I did near the top center window, with whatever sparkle, some special starry like Christmas wallpaper that I used for that. That those turned out kind of cool to have some larger artificial banner looking things there. And then I went and I ended up replacing all of the mount sections for the statues with gray painted chlorophyte bricks to make them a little shinier. Um, and that's something that after I got generally finished here, coming up on sort of the initial finished product, which here in the supporting dirt and ground level, I left a few gaps in and detailed the underground with plants and walls and stuff. A little bit different than what I did underneath the furniture and the die displays, but that's because this dirt support section is actually smaller and than the section that's underneath the other bigger buildings. So I had a little bit more uh, lightness to play with, add a little greenery in detail, and then went for some little vine structures also, to include on the sides of the building. Anyway, with the inside generally getting finished up, I went and I randomly, or somewhat randomly, spaced out all the different statues here. You can see, so I had them organized in storage so that I made sure that I had all of them lined up. And so when I placed them, I just sprinkled them around wherever as I went. And it worked out pretty decently overall. I did some manual switch ups, like maybe to move the certain similar statues away from other ones or something like that, but got the lights hooked up. Then though, here I took kind of the first general screenshot to see what it looked like overall, and then I realized that it was just a lot of gray sparkly texture, and it all kind of blended together in the big picture. The staircases really didn't stand out at all, and so I needed to make a few adjustments. I went and I switched out the spiral staircases for smooth granite platforms right away, and then I added some darker accent sections near the pillars instead of the closer blending light gray or regular gray bricks. So I got out the smooth granite wall and darkened up the portions next to the main support pillars. And this I found really brought back the contrast to show the actual detail and structural support of the inside of the building. But the chlorophyte brick was still a little bit too weird. It was sparkly and shiny, and it kind of detracted from the cleanliness. So I ended up going back to regular bricks and called it good from there. And then after that, jumped right back down to start laying out the banner hall. So to start with, I just got different sections of platforms measured out. And in this case, I definitely had a certain way that I wanted to organize the banners. They have many different sections that are unique and designated together, and I was organizing them, mainly the enemy banners, of course, based on enemy type and biome of origin. So all of the crimson enemies would go together, all the corrupt enemies would go together. We got the snow enemies, and you get the idea. So I quickly realized with the entire length of the hallway that whatever it was, 277 banners or whatever, we're not going to fit all side by side. So I did have to double them up into a couple, two different rows, at least for many of the sections. Some of the sections of banners were small enough to where I just had a single row, but many of them I did double up to make it more compact. And so I figured out what different sections I could and should double stack, and then got them all arranged appropriately and spaced out. And then I tried to add some level of symmetric organization, symmetrical organization, and then broke down the detailing after that, yes. The one small section in the very front, which would be to the far right-hand side of the hallway, there are those four little platforms for banner hanging, and those were for non-enemy banners, so the crafted ones and the found ones, which there really are not a lot of, especially when compared to the total number of enemy banners that there are. But other than that, all those other sections were just for enemy banners. Importantly, there was a change made to the banner hanging, where you could hang them from any platform, which works out very nice. Previously, you could not hang banners from straight platforms, but you could, however, hang them from hammered platforms, meaning either stairs or half slabs, which was kind of interesting and probably not intended, but it was a cool trick that I had found out and then used quite often previously. However, nowadays you can just hang them from regular platforms with no issue. Which actually I guess I'm not doing here, because I did actually hammer all of these platforms into half slabs. And I don't remember specifically why I did that. I suppose it might thin up the sprite for the platform just slightly. So maybe I wanted it to have a little bit of a sleeker look, but I don't remember for sure. I think mainly I probably wanted to try to center it within the little highlight wall that I was putting together. And then I was still trying to decide what type of platform actually was going to be best for hanging the banners from. I had many different options, obviously, and end up playing with the idea of green brick platforms painted white. I don't remember if that's what my final decision stays on or not, but I do like the green brick platforms quite a lot generally. They have that little bumpy, round, circular detail that goes onto the bottom part of the platform, and so they look a little bit fancy and have a cool texture to them. And then in the center of the hall here, I do have a break in the banner sections where I had planned on doing a staircase of some kind that would allow the player to explore up and then get to the statue and also the music displays from there. So I took a little bit of a distraction and I looked at how to get this staircase filled in here or built. So got didn't end up just doing a regular spiral staircase. Instead, I went for a little bit of a different design to try to add that depth. Used a little bit of minecart track to look like a railing, and overall it did turn out kind of cool looking, I think. But it's no spiral, for better or for worse, I guess. Then generally, I at this point I have the all of the walls kind of figured out. A lot of well, I would say a lot of Evanstone brick walls, but those actually might be sandstone bricks. I might have been incorrect, assuming some of that before. I don't remember. And then the actual banners highlighted with marble wall, and then a little bit of a border of a darker gray wall, which I looks like I used pearlstone brick walls for that little gray accent border. And then start going on lighting. So I got just regular candles to provide a little bit of yellowy soft light. I felt like that fit the theme better than, say, white torches would, although those would provide the best bright, true lighting for the banners. In this case, the banners themselves, I don't often think of as needing to see in their full bright form. I like the color of the banner as it reflects the biome or the environment that it came from. And I felt like building an environment or a structure in this hallway to have its own unique feel worked better for displaying the banners than simply a bright white true color display. Um, if that makes any sense at all. Each of the banner sections, I ended up with a little bit of space to put a various type of painting above, and so I actually really enjoyed doing that. I picked a painting that I thought fit well with each different section of banners and went ahead and hung that up to add to that environmental connection. And then I filled in a bunch of the furniture across the whole floor with different marble furniture. Worked pretty well. And then went and filled in all of the dirt underneath the hallway. Got a little bit more dirt thrown in up top in order to provide a baseline for building the music display following, and then it was time to get the actual banners out. So again, I had them pretty well organized and uh, lined up and ready to go, so I just had to get them out of one inventory load at a time and and transfer them over to the display. At this point, like I said, I basically had it all planned out on where everything was going, and as long as I didn't miscount or misplace certain things, then it usually works out. You'll notice in my inventory right now, I have torches placed on my number 9 and 0 slot in my hotbar, and I do that quite often when I'm transferring organized items in this way. I will take a couple of torches or other blank item and put them in my hotbar so that when I shift click or loot all um, items out of a chest, they stay a lot better organized by not having priority to go into my hotbar. And that way I can keep everything in a straight line and organized as I want. Oh, actually, so I was wrong about my painting idea. I started off with just random paintings, and then I realized at this point that I wanted to actually fit them better with the theme of whatever banner section they were near and represented. So then I made a little adjustment there. So I didn't actually think of that first off. I modified to that. A little bit of an adjustment with the walls in the exterior marble monolith on the left there. I decided to bring the full light blocking background walls all the way up to the ground level of this part, where I'm now starting on the music manor, which turns out to be the music box display. But I wanted to bring the ground level up visually on the monolith, um, so that the perceived ground level was even in a better space, I guess. Now the music manor, the final section in today's time lapse, I wanted it to be cozy, green. I wanted to feel um, grown in and sheltered and nestled in uh, greenery. But taking that general broad idea to build some sort of a cottage or um, uh, well, a cottage, cabin, house, whatever the heck you want to call it. Um, I was going for cozy, nestled cottage uh, in a lively woods feel. That's a terrible way to try to describe it, but it's hard. It's a little bit hard to do cozy because I also needed it to be scaled fairly large, um, with the necessity to fit all 88 or whatever music boxes. How many were there? Didn't I have it? Uh, I thought I. Where did I see it? Here it is. Yeah, 88. 88 music boxes. But I also needed a little bit of space because I wanted to put like the different instruments also in here. I felt like this was the best place to put those in. But in general, my idea for making it feel more cozy, even though it had to be pretty big, was to make a much less organized and smaller room layout, smaller rooms, larger number of rooms, to make it feel more like a cottage or a cabin than a big like museum. So generally, the shape started coming together, and once I had it, basically at this point, the rooms were kind of designated in size and shape. I made a little bit of an adjustment here and there to the roof, and then I think pretty soon I start going on figuring out where and how to array the various numbers of music boxes. I guess I do a little structural work here beforehand, a little bit more foundation work. I wanted a back patio area out on the left outside, so I had a little bit of like I'm trying to think of the right way to describe it. It's not quite a lattice, but it's kind of a lattice where you have that little um, wooden, loose wooden structure up above a patio or a pathway or walkway, and then plants can grow on and vines can sort of fill it over on their own. That's kind of what I wanted on the back side of the house there on the left. And then I guess I actually, before the music boxes, I went and generally started working on how to uh, put walls in each of the rooms. So generally, the cottage-y theme was my goal, and I wanted a lot of variety and uniqueness and separation in the various rooms and sections. So I got quite a few different wall types that I could imagine connecting with the theme, and then went and got busy just filling in all the rooms. Again, instead of spiral staircases in here, I went with um, the minecart track handrail trick to try to make the staircases um, have a little more depth and detail to them. Generally, it was working pretty decent. I found that in addition to the minecarts for the little banister or whatever you call it, having large bamboo walls or something similar to provide the little pole or post structure to mount the banister against was very important. Um, you notice it in kind of the first stairway that leads up from the bottom floor. It branches to the left and to the right. Oh, here I'm working on the little back porch slash patio. But in that little branching staircase, how either side has the little knob of large bamboo walls painted brown, and that provides a little post to mount the handrail against. I found that to be pretty important to actually make the look kind of work. Um, and then got a couple of windows laid out here. And then finally I go ahead and get going on laying out platforms and measuring out space for all of the different music boxes. Music boxes are also one that, yes, kind of have their own separate um, grouped themes or themed groups. Um, but in general, there's also not really a great way to organize them linearly or anything. Just all of the different biomes, all of the different bosses. You could generally find a theme for them or organize them based on game progression. But in general, it definitely isn't that important or relevant to me thinking about it broadly. So I hadn't intended on labeling or organizing big sections like that. So that was another thing that allowed me to build this many unique and variable in size rooms to show off the music boxes. I knew I didn't need to organize them very specifically. I just needed enough space overall. So that wasn't too bad. Still messing around with the roof, and I realized if I actually alternate between blue and red Dynasty shingles, painting them both with like deep green, or maybe this is even lime. They may be deep lime paint because when I actuate, it makes it darker and looks like deep green. But if I alternate between different blocks, it provides that little bit of a um, non-blending separation and gives the roof shingles a little more layering and depth, which definitely helps the roof as a whole quite a lot. And at this point, I really wanted to make sure that I was able to get that cozy, ingrown, overgrown feel. So I started laying out artificial living trees. So my got my living tree palette from previously, where I mix living wood and living mahogany painted brown, and maybe even just one or two pieces of marble here and there. I also wanted to depict the tree behind the house, so where I could, included bits of the center tree through the windows in the interior, so that you could see little snippets of the wood of the tree through there. And then the third tree, of course, to go on the left-hand side out in the backyard to nicely fill in that whole area. Generally got the trunk and the main branch structure, and then so from there I started filling in leaves as best I could. I wanted it to be a little bit droopy, um, maybe emulate some sort of willow or willow relative tree variety. And then I tried something a little bit interesting where in small areas I overlapped the tree in front of, say, the roof, or made it look like it was overlapping in front. I suppose I did a similar thing with the statue display and the vine growth over on the right hand side earlier. I tried to visually add that extra depth in where it works out. Um, Another kind of interesting thing that I throw in at some point later on, maybe, is in the actual roof and wall blocks of the cabin here, of the manor. I I mix in a little bit of like luminite and some weird bricks just to add a little bit of weird magic-y overgrown effect. Um, it's pretty subtle in the whole thing and uh, mostly unnoticeable, but I felt like it could use just a little bit of weird magicness or something to it. So there's supposed to be a little bit of that in, but you'll probably see briefly later on when I throw that in. One part that I do really like is the chimney. I just actuated or not actuated, but I echo coded the chimney furniture item so that it produced smoke, and then had it smoking out of my actual visible chimney, which I just made out of different blocks and walls. The color and the shape turned out pretty nice though. And then that allowed me to have a nice continuous chimney in the interior for coziness as well. Really trying to get enough texture added into the tree here. So start with the living leaf blocks, and then throw in a bunch of walls and some actuated sections of branches as well. But then I think I do, unlike my other main trees that I've done so far, I do include some other leaf textures, like maybe uh, coral and flowers to painted green to add more fullness to the leaves. Oh, here's where I mess around with the little bits of luminite and kind of dirty up the structure just slightly. So there's like a little bit of luminite and lead bricks, I think, sprinkled in just to add a little bit of weirdness, I guess. And then in the back patio, I needed to add some hanging garden areas, some plant shelves, and then in the backyard, I really wanted it to feel alive. So I got working on that, adding in as many little plant features and structures and stuff as I could. Oh, I got out some vine rope actually and added that into the tree, and that kind of adds to the droopy feel that I was hoping to go for. Of course, ground level vines and background bushes are also important. So a mix of jungle and regular leaves and then living leaves and stuff like that. My actually my go-to is usually flower walls when it comes to the background bushes and stuff. And so I like going with that just to add the occasional flower here and there. I find that the flowers are rare enough when used in like these small sections that it almost never hurts to use flower walls instead of grass walls. In fact, I probably almost never use the regular grass wall anymore. It's almost always flower. Or if you want a little bit of a deeper green instead of the lighter uh, green, the living leaf wall, of course, has a little bit more of a depth and vibrancy to it. Still having a lot of fun with all of the plants, the flowers, and everything to pack in as much of that liveliness as I can, and then finally move back in towards the interior of the cottage, of the manor, and get going on interior furnishing. And this one, as you can imagine, with the chaotic, vibrant theme, is a lot of different types of furniture. So I use tons of different sets, different parts and pieces here and there. This little room on the back left here, I wanted it to be kind of like kitchen or working room, so I was furnishing that kind of accordingly. And generally, I kind of tried to have a, a theme for most of the rooms themselves, where like maybe there's a little bedroom section, the main living room and grand open room up top, maybe a dining area, dining in the bottom center, and then some sort of a little workstation room in the back left there. There's like an alchemy station and the steampunk um, furnace is in there. I also use I use four different types of fireplaces throughout each of the floors where the chimney runs up. So I have the regular fireplace, followed by the furnace, followed by the titanium forge, followed by the adamantite forge, just for that chaotic variety. Um, and then inside, of course, I still add a lot of different plants, little like planter box sections on the inside of the house with Rebel Maker placed large plant furniture features and just really filled the whole thing up with greenery and plants. Of course, the main purpose of the display is the music boxes, and I suppose of all of my museum-esque displays. The Music Manor is probably the least, does the worst job of highlighting the item on display. It's so busy and chaotic and green and overgrown by design that it can be a little bit de distracting from the actual music boxes, of course. But I wasn't really too concerned about that. I really wanted to build this theme on top of the capacity to show off the music boxes. So that's pretty much, yeah, what the theme ended up being as, though. And I wait till the very end to finally go and grab the actual music boxes and get them all in place and put up. But overall, definitely a fun little section of build, and it really does feel much more alive than most anything else, I'd say. Here we go, finally, with the music boxes. And they definitely add to it, and you can tell that they are there, and they are organized somewhat like in little on little platforms and shelves. So it's not too hard to tell that that's supposed to be what is being displayed, I suppose. But with the Music Manor here, that basically wraps up the entire surface level on the left-hand side of the very outermost displays of Tigaria. Here I go, filling in the signs, and that basically concludes the left-hand wing here. So next time, I believe we will continue on similarly, but on the right-hand side, where we go on the whole surface extravaganza on that side. But that does it for this episode. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have an outstanding rest of your day.